So we were going to talk about the tiara.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought it said no.
I know, but I just think it would look so fabulous if you
Yeah, but
did.
I've only got little tiny tiaras. They're not really worth it.
The palace did not tremble because of a speech, a scandal, or a public insult. It trembled because of one command delivered in private. William ordered Camilla to return the emerald tiara held under the Queen Mother's private trust. For Camilla, it was more than jewelry. It was status, security, and proof that she belonged. For William, it was the line that could no longer be crossed. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Camilla did not move when the message reached her inside Clarence's house. Her fingers rested against the edge of the table, but her face changed first, hardening in that small, dangerous way people notice before words arrive. Clarence's house, the royal residence long linked with Charles and Camilla's life together, suddenly felt less like a home and more like a room where judgment had entered without asking permission. The Queen Mother's private trust meant a protected family arrangement, a legal holding meant to guard selected possessions for royal legacy rather than personal use. That mattered because the emerald tiara was not being treated as a simple ornament. It carried memory. It carried rank. It carried the quiet message of who was trusted to hold the past. William stood across from Camilla with the kind of calm that made the moment worse. He did not raise his voice. He did not soften the command. The prince chose every word, as if each one had already been weighed, sharpened, and approved before he entered the room. Camilla looked at him once, then looked toward the door, as if expecting Charles to appear and undo the humiliation before it fully landed. But the king was not there. His absence spoke louder than any defense he could have offered, because it left William standing alone with authority that no one in the room could ignore. A palace aide stepped forward and placed the trust file on the table. The sound was small, but it cut through the silence like a blade. Camilla's eyes dropped to it, and in that instant, she understood the worst part. This was not a request waiting for her feelings. This was a decision already made. The emerald tiara was being removed from her personal control, and the future king had chosen to make the boundary unmistakable. Camilla drew in a slow breath, but tears did not come. Anger came first. Hurt followed behind it. William saw both, and for a moment, even his controlled expression tightened. He knew this order would wound her deeply, but he also knew why he had come. If the monarchy allowed private symbols to become personal trophies, then duty would bend every time emotion pushed hard enough. Camilla finally spoke, her voice low and bitter. "Who gave you the right?" And before the answer could reach Camilla, the palace had to confront the people whose names, loyalties, and old wounds were tied to the emerald stones. This was never just William against Camilla. Around the emerald tiara stood a circle of people carrying old pain and private duty. William saw inheritance. Camilla saw acceptance. Charles saw the cost of silence. Catherine saw the pressure building behind her husband's restraint. And somewhere in the memory of the Queen Mother's legacy, the tiara became a test of who truly protected the monarchy. William understood the danger before others dared name it. The prince was not fighting over sparkle or ceremony. He was guarding royal assets, meaning historic possessions held for the crown's life, rather than personal comfort. That mattered, because once a trusted object became a private weapon, every future boundary could weaken. Camilla believed the opposite. The queen consort felt her years of service, public judgment, and endurance had earned her a permanent place inside the inner circle, the small private group whose access shapes decisions before the public hears them. Charles read the file alone, and the room seemed to shrink around him. The king lowered his eyes, turned one page, then another, and set the papers down as though the weight had moved from the table into his chest. He loved Camilla. He knew she had stood beside him through storms that would have broken others. But he also knew the institution could not survive if affection kept bending the rules. The monarch's silence was not peace. It was pain wearing a crown. Catherine watched William before the next meeting and saw what others missed. His face remained calm, but his stillness was too exact, too carefully held. The princess knew that look. It was the expression of a man controlling anger, because anger would make the truth easier to fore. She did not push him. She asked whether he was ready, and William answered with a nod that carried more finality than any speech. A senior courtier then delivered the warning that changed the air. The courtier, a palace advisor, responsible for guiding sensitive household matters, said Camilla's refusal could move the issue from private correction to formal palace action. That phrase meant the family would no longer settle it softly behind doors. The decision could become recorded, enforced, and impossible to reverse. Camilla heard that message and felt the ground shift. The trust language appeared to give William a stronger claim than she expected, and the balance inside the family changed in one breath. Camilla did not surrender. She folded her hands, lifted her chin, and decided the emerald tiara would not leave quietly. Yet the real reason William moved so decisively was buried in a moment from the past that no one inside the palace could forget. The breaking point began weeks earlier, at a private Windsor banquet, when Camilla appeared, wearing the emerald tiara, during a gathering meant to honor the Queen Mother's legacy. The room noticed, William noticed, Catherine noticed. Charles looked away. What should have been a ceremonial evening became the trigger that turned concern into action. Because the tiara was not supposed to appear that night, Camilla entered with the calm confidence of someone who believed the hardest years were behind. Well, the queen consort carried herself as if the emerald tiara belonged naturally above her name, her history, and her place beside Charles. A private Windsor banquet meant a closed royal dinner held away from public cameras, where family members, senior aides, and trusted guests gathered for tradition rather than display. That mattered, because this dinner honored the Queen Mother's legacy, and the emerald stones were tied to that memory in a way no one in the room could ignore. William saw the tiara before he fully looked at Camilla. The prince went still, so still that Catherine felt the change before anyone spoke. She placed one quiet hand on his arm, not to stop him forever, but to hold him in that single dangerous second. Catherine knew the future king could not confront Camilla in front of guests without turning the banquet into a battlefield. William knew it too, so he swallowed the anger, smiled when he had to, and let the evening continue, while the room quietly shifted around the emerald light. Charles noticed the tension and chose silence. The king looked away at the exact moment William looked toward him, and that small avoidance would later matter more than any argument. Charles wanted peace. He wanted the night to pass, without another wound opening inside the family. But William saw something different. He saw a boundary being tested in front of everyone, and he saw Camilla standing at the center of it, as if no one had the courage to challenge her. A courtier confirmed the truth after the banquet, in a documented household account prepared for William's office. The courtier explained that the emerald piece had been withdrawn, without the level of approval the prince believed was required. A trust arrangement, in plain terms, is a protected legal structure that controls who may use or hold certain family possessions. That mattered because the tiara was not simply borrowed for beauty. Its use carried authority, memory, and a signal of permission. William listened without interrupting, but his face changed when the courtier reached the final line. Camilla had worn the tiara as if the question had already been settled. Charles later asked for the matter to be handled softly, but the prince believed softness was exactly what had allowed the breach. That night became the point of no return, and William began building the case that would one day land on Camilla's table. Once the memory of that banquet returned, the next meeting could not remain polite for long. The confrontation did not happen before cameras or crowds. It happened behind a closed door, with no smiles, no ceremony, and no escape. William entered first. Camilla waited beside a polished table. Charles stood near the window, pale with dread. When the door shut, the sound carried the weight of a verdict. The emerald tiara had become the battlefield. William kept his eyes on Camilla, but he knew Charles was watching every breath between them. The prince had agreed to this private meeting because public exposure would have wounded the monarchy before the family could contain the damage. Trust-held object, in plain words, means a possession controlled by a protected family arrangement, rather than by one person's personal wishes. That mattered because the emerald tiara was not being argued over as decoration. It represented control, permission, and the fragile line between service and entitlement. Camilla gripped the back of the chair and accused William of humiliating her. Her voice stayed sharp, but underneath it lived something rawer. The fear that the years she had spent proving herself could be erased by one file. The queen consort looked toward Charles, wanting him to step in, wanting the king to say this had gone too far. But he remained near the window, trapped between the wife he loved and the royal duty he could no longer soften, without consequence. William placed one hand on the file before Charles could speak. The prince did not raise his voice. That made the words colder. Dignity cannot be built on something taken beyond its rightful limits. The sentence landed hard because it named what everyone had avoided. If Camilla kept the tiara after the trust had been questioned, then every future royal boundary could become a private negotiation. The king tried to interrupt, but William shook his head once and said the decision could not be softened again. Camilla's face changed. She turned from Charles back to William and asked whether Catherine had pushed him into this. The name hung in the room like a match near dry paper. The princess had not entered the meeting, but Catherine's quiet strength had already become part of the story. Because Camilla believed, the future queen understood exactly what the emerald tiara symbolized. William said nothing. His silence made the room colder than any denial. Camilla looked down at the return document and refused to touch it. The queen consort stepped back from the table, and in that movement, the private correction failed. Charles closed his eyes, as if hearing the harsher machinery of the palace begin to turn. And when Camilla refused to sign, the question shifted from emotion to power. Power inside a monarchy rarely announces itself loudly. Sometimes it appears as a line in a trust document, a sealed inventory, a name written beside an object that carries history. William did not need to shout, because the file spoke for him. Camilla understood that, and it frightened her. The emerald tiara was no longer protected by sentiment. It was protected by structure. William stood over the file, as if the pages had become a wall between the past and the future. The Queen Mother's private trust, in simple terms, was a protected family arrangement, designed to keep certain treasured possessions under controlled royal custody, not under one person's personal command. That mattered, because the emerald tiara was not just a beautiful object. It carried legacy, permission, and the quiet approval of generations. If Camilla kept it after the breach, then other jewels, other heirlooms, and other private royal pieces could one day be treated the same way. Charles studied the wording again and slowly removed his glasses. The king did not speak at first, because every line seemed to take another option away from him. Camilla watched him from across the room, waiting for resistance, waiting for the husband who had defended her through years of storms. But Charles saw what William saw. This was no longer a family preference. It had become a formal correction of royal property boundaries, meaning the palace had to restore control over something that had drifted too close to personal possession. Camilla felt cornered, and that made her anger sharper. The queen consort had believed the tiara spoke of acceptance. After years of judgment, criticism, and public struggle, now the document stripped all of that emotion away. It did not care what she had endured. It did not care what she believed she had earned. It reduced the emeralds to status, custody, and authority, and that coldness hurt more than any shouted accusation. A senior palace advisor then explained the danger in a documented internal briefing prepared for the household. The advisor warned that allowing Camilla to keep the tiara could create a precedent, meaning a past example that others might use later to justify taking or wearing royal pieces without proper approval. William listened closely. The prince understood the warning at once. If one boundary fell quietly, another could fall louder, and the monarchy would be left pretending the damage was tradition. William learned something else from that briefing, and it darkened his mood. Some aides had known about the banquet withdrawal before the confrontation began, but they delayed telling him because they feared conflict. The future king stared at the line in the account, then closed the folder with controlled force. Camilla had worn the tiara, but others had allowed the silence around it to grow. William demanded more than the tiara's return after that. The prince demanded accountability for who enabled it, who hid it, and who hoped the matter would fade. That demand sent the first shockwave through the household, and Camilla felt the walls closing in. The first consequence was not public. It was private, almost cruel in its simplicity. A velvet case was brought into the room where Camilla waited, and for the first time, She looked at the empty space where the emerald tiara would have to go. No speech could soften that sight. No title could protect her from what it meant. Camilla sat alone after the aides stepped back, and the silence around her felt heavier than accusation. The queen consort looked at the velvet case, as if it had been placed there to measure her fall. The formal return process meant the palace would record the tiara's movement through an inventory, a written list that tracks royal possessions, so no one can later deny where they went. That mattered, because this was no longer a private disagreement with William. It was now a controlled handover, witnessed by officials, written into palace records, and tied to the trust confirmation that removed the emerald tiara from her reach. A palace official explained the next step without cruelty, and somehow, that made it worse. Camilla would lose access to the tiara, and the piece would return to secured trust custody, meaning protected storage under the rules of the private family arrangement. The queen consort heard every word, but her face stayed fixed in that proud, wounded stillness people use when they refuse to let others see the break. She had worn crowns, greeted crowds, survived judgment, and stood beside Charles through years of storms. Yet now one empty case made all that success feel fragile. Camilla reached for the emerald tiara, with a hand that betrayed her before her voice could. A staff member noticed the tremor, then looked away quickly, as if witnessing pain had become its own breach of duty. The queen consort placed the tiara inside the case with careful control, but the moment still felt like surrender. The emerald stones no longer answered to her. They answered to the trust, to the file, and to the future king, who had forced the return. Charles entered later, and stopped near the door. The king saw the closed case, then saw Camilla, and for a moment, he could not meet her eyes. His silence cut deeper than argument, because she had wanted defense, not pity. Charles had protected peace for too long, and now peace had turned against them both. Whispers moved faster than the official record. The return was logged quietly, but staff corridors began carrying the story in half-sentences and lowered voices. Camilla felt it before anyone told her. William had won the first battle, but the wound he opened still had to be faced. William prepared for one more private conversation, and this one would decide whether the breach could heal or become permanent. That conversation came not with advisors, not with files, but with two people facing each other, without the palace between them. After the confrontation, William did not go to a council chamber. He went to Charles. No aide stood nearby. No advisor translated the meaning of the moment. Father and son faced each other in a silence, years in the making. The emerald tiara had exposed more than a trust issue. It had exposed the ache between a king trying to preserve peace and a prince preparing to inherit consequences. William entered without the hard edge he had carried before Camilla. The prince saw Charles seated alone, and the anger inside him shifted into something heavier. A council chamber, in simple words, is a formal room where senior decisions are discussed under official rules and records. That mattered because William avoided that setting on purpose. He did not want another layer of palace machinery between himself and his father. He wanted the truth spoken plainly, before duty became another shield for silence. Charles looked older in that private moment. The king had spent years protecting Camilla from public cruelty, and he had believed mercy meant softening every blow before it reached her. Now he understood that the same mercy had left William carrying decisions that should have been faced earlier. Charles admitted, in a low voice later preserved in a private family account, that he had wanted to spare his wife humiliation. The monarch did not deny the trust. He did not defend the banquet. He only confessed the weakness beneath his delay. William listened, and for the first time that day, his expression softened. The future king could see the exhaustion in Charles, and that sight hurt him more than victory ever could have pleased him. But he would not apologize for protecting the Queen Mother's private trust, the protected family arrangement that kept treasured royal possessions from becoming personal weapons. That mattered because the emerald tiara had become a test of whether the monarchy could still draw lines inside its own home. Charles leaned back and closed his eyes. The king finally said what no advisor had dared say for him. William had acted where he had hesitated. The words did not sound proud. They sounded painful. Yet once Charles spoke them, the room changed. Camilla's hope of reversal began to die in that silence. Because the monarch had stopped resisting the decision, the return would remain final. The emerald tiara would stay beyond her reach. William did not celebrate. The prince only nodded, as if accepting a burden rather than a blessing. Charles looked at his son and saw not rebellion, but preparation. He saw a future king learning that love cannot always be gentle when legacy is at risk. And with Charles no longer standing in the way, the palace understood the next danger. But private decisions do not stay private for long when they carry emeralds, inheritance, and the future king's authority. By morning, the story had escaped the palace walls. London woke to a front page that showed a dark velvet tiara case, beside one brutal headline. Emerald Return. William draws the line. Outside Buckingham Palace, a small crowd gathered in the cold, speaking in low voices as cameras waited. What had begun as a private order had become a public judgment. Camilla watched the coverage without speaking, and that silence frightened the room more than anger would have. The queen consort sat still as the headline moved from newspaper stands to breakfast broadcasts, each retelling making the loss feel sharper. Buckingham Palace, the main working center of the monarchy, where official royal announcements and public duties often begin, mattered here because anything tied to its gates became bigger than family. This was no longer only about William forcing the return of the emerald tiara connected to the Queen Mother's private trust. It had become a test of whether royal privilege could still be corrected when the person involved stood beside the king. William saw the same headline and looked troubled. The prince understood why the public reacted so strongly, but he also understood the cost of being seen as ruthless. Thousands of broadcasters framed the story as a sign that the future king was already shaping the monarchy's standards, meaning the rules and expectations that would guide royal conduct in the next reign. That mattered, because people were not only watching what happened to Camilla, they were watching what William would allow, what he would stop, and how far he would go to protect inherited duty. A morning broadcaster delivered the line that spread fastest. This is not a jewel story. This is a power story. The phrase cut through the noise because it gave the public a simple way to understand the shock. Camilla had lost access to a symbol many believed represented acceptance. William had gained a reputation for discipline that looked strong to some and cold to others. The queen consort heard the line repeated twice, then turned the sound down, wounded not only by the return, but by the way strangers were now explaining her humiliation. Outside Buckingham Palace, the gathered crowd turned the emerald tiara into something larger than royal ornament. Some spoke of fairness, others spoke of privilege. A few simply stared at the gates, waiting for movement, as if the stones themselves might somehow appear and answer for the family. The dark velvet case on the front page became the image of the day, and the brutal headline became the sentence no palace statement could erase. William knew the response had to be careful. Camilla knew the damage had already reached beyond the room where the tiara was returned. And as the palace drafted its measured words, everyone understood that the final meaning of this moment would depend on what happened inside the family next. And when the noise outside began to fade, the monarchy was left with the one question no headline could answer: what had truly been restored? In the end, the emerald tiara returned to its case, but nothing returned to the way it had been. Camilla lost more than access to jewels. William gained more than control over a trust. Charles learned that silence can become its own betrayal, and the monarchy discovered that survival sometimes demands a wound before it can reclaim its discipline. Camilla faced the finality with a silence that no one mistook for peace. The queen consort had surrendered the emerald tiara, and the peace was secured again under the Queen Mother's private trust, a protected family arrangement meant to guard treasured royal possessions for legacy rather than personal control. That mattered because the return did more than settle a dispute. It restored a boundary. It told the household that status could not rewrite custody, and personal pain could not erase duty. William carried the victory like a burden. The prince had protected the monarchy, but he had also damaged a fragile family peace that might never fully repair. He knew Camilla would see the decision as humiliation. He knew Charles would remember the moment as the day his son acted where he had hesitated. Yet the future king also knew that avoiding pain had become its own danger. If the emerald tiara remained in uncertain hands, every future argument over royal inheritance could begin with that weakness. Charles accepted the verdict in private, not with celebration, but with the heavy grief of a man who understood what had been revealed. The king saw that William's firmness had shown the future shape of royal authority, colder, clearer, and less willing to hide behind emotion. He had wanted to spare Camilla. He had wanted peace, but the monarch finally understood that peace without discipline becomes surrender, and surrender inside a crown never stays private for long. Catherine recognized the deeper change before anyone named it. The princess saw that loyalty inside the family would now be measured differently, not by who stayed quiet, not by who protected comfort, but by who defended inheritance, restraint, and the rules that kept the monarchy from becoming a private battlefield. Catherine understood William's pain, and she understood Camilla's wound, but she also understood why the line had to hold. Camilla remained bruised, but the decision stood. William remained troubled, but the trust was protected. Charles remained saddened, but the verdict was accepted. The emerald tiara became the symbol of a monarchy choosing discipline over comfort, duty over sentiment, and the future over old avoidance. There is no unresolved ending here. Camilla surrendered the tiara. William held the line. Charles accepted the verdict, and the monarchy emerged colder, stricter, and unmistakably changed. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.